woodland seat. Everyone knew about the special chair, but very few people had ever seen it. The woodland seat was like a famous story around our town. If you go by the river into the woods, turn right at the big rubber tree, and walk toward where the sun sets, you'll find the Devil's Clearing. In that clearing, there's a stone chair. They say if you sit on it, the devil will curse you forever. I've heard this story since I was old enough to go to sleepovers, and I always wanted to find out if it was true or not. Some people went into the woods, and I remember the first time someone showed me a video from a camera of a strange stone chair with faces carved in it. Later, they found out it was fake, just something they made and filmed that night. But others said they found the real chair. Their videos were either better or worse than the first shaky one, but they all made me really excited. I always dreamed of seeing the real seat. When Mrs. Raggles gave us a final project about urban legends for English class, I thought it was the perfect chance. The project was actually about why urban legends exist, and she wanted us to make our own. I asked if our project could be about finding the woodland seat, and she looked really happy. "Does this have anything to do with John's AV project?" she asked with a little wink. "Maybe," I said, not giving away our plans to Mrs. Raggles. John and I have been buddies for a long time, and he's always been into making movies. Ever since we were little kids in elementary school, John had this cheap camera his dad got him from Toys R Us when he was just 6. We used that camera a lot, spending 4 years making our own short films and big backyard adventures. Even though John got fancier cameras as we got older, his love for making movies never changed. He'd often ask me, Sean, and Fred, our other friends, to be in his films, and this time was no different. "I've got plenty of battery packs and memory cards to record for 3 whole days," he told us in his garage during his pitch meeting. "I don't see any reason why we can't make the next awesome found footage movie." John's big project, his senior film thesis, was also about urban legends, especially how they fit into scary movies. He wanted to make the woodland seat the bad guy in his found footage film, like The Witch in the Blair Witch Project. We would be his group of teens going on an adventure to find it. I thought it would be a cool trip for my paper in Mrs. Raggles' class, but Sean and Fred just wanted an excuse to go camping in the nice woods around our town. We all grew up here, and we liked camping until it got too cold in the winter. I was excited about cooking hot dogs and s'mores while we told stories and hung out this weekend. So, when we told our parents we'd be back on Monday night and went into the woods on Friday afternoon, we were ready to spend 3 nights outdoors. We brought lots of food, plenty of water, and had a 4-man tent with sleeping bags. Since it was April and getting warm, we didn't think we needed anything too hard. John had his film stuff, with his camera ready, and the 3 of us carried camping gear, acting like his helpful pack mules. As we reached the river, where the water was frothy from melting snow in the mountains, John said it would be a great place to start our movie. The river is the first part of our journey. From here, we set out to find the woodland seat and make our names famous in history. I'll never forget the big grin on his face at that moment. It was a really cool moment, but good things don't always last. John counted down as I stood by the river, getting ready to say my part. Fred and Sean decided I should do most of the talking in the movie since they didn't want to learn lines. They thought I had the best video-worthy narration voice, but I think they just wanted to have fun on our camping trip. To be honest, so did I. This is the Leftree River, the start of our journey. I wasn't sure if my voice could be heard over the rushing water, but John gave me a thumbs up, and I kept going. The story goes that if you follow the river until you reach a big old rubber tree, then turn east and walk into the woods until it gets dark, you'll find the Devil's Clearing and the woodland seat. Whoever sits on it is said to be cursed forever, tormented because they dared to sit where the devil once rested. Tonight, we plan to find that seat. And cut, John said, pressing the stop button and nodding, "Very nice, love it." "So, what if we can't find this rubber tree?" Sean asked as we put on our backpacks and went deeper into the woods. I guess we just wait until we find the fork in the river, I said after thinking about it for a moment. What if we don't find that? Fred asked, taking a sip from his water as the leaves squished beneath our feet. Boys, John said, you're missing the point. Which is? Fred asked. The point isn't whether we find the woodland seat or not, I explained. We're here to follow the instructions and see if we find anything. That's the project. The legend brought us here, the power of the urban legend itself, and now we want to see where it can take us. Fred laughed. So this could all be a wild goose chase is what you're telling us. I snorted and bumped him with my shoulder. You're getting a 3-day camping trip out of it, Fred. Cheer up. We followed the river as the afternoon went on. The woods looked nice this time of year. Summer was about to come, and everything was green. The water would be too cold for swimming, although I thought Sean might try. Sean liked the cold, he was used to it and might take a swim tomorrow before we set off. None of us thought we'd reach the Devil's Clearing by sunset today. We planned to set up camp, cook some hot dogs, do some fishing, and head out tomorrow at sunset. We were camping, so there was no need to rush. On that first day, we walked most of the way. We weren't going too fast because we had been at school all day and weren't in a hurry. Monday was a holiday, and our parents knew we wouldn't be home until Monday night. We chatted and joked, doing the usual high school boy banter during the afternoon. But as the sun started to set, we began looking for the special tree or the fork in the path. Some kid who claimed he had totally been to the Devil's Clearing had assured us this was the right way, and that was part of our project. If we couldn't find our way using only the urban legend, then what was the point? It was getting dark when we reached the rubber tree. It had to be the one from the story. First of all, it was huge, much bigger than any normal tree I'd ever seen, and the leaves didn't leave much mystery about its type. Plus, it was right in the split of the river, where the water went east and west. It seemed like a good spot to set up our tent. Sean started putting up the tent while Fred and I went to gather firewood. We left John to set up our fire pit and came back with wood to find the pit dug and the tent already up. As it got dark, we filled the woods with the smell of roasting hot dogs, canned chili, and s'mores. How do you think the chair curses you? Fred asked, blowing on his blackened hot dog before placing it on a piece of white bread. I don't know, John said with a mouthful of food, and I just shrugged. I thought you were the expert. Here, Sean said to me as he closed his s'more into the metal square used to toast the whole thing. I mean, I know the chair is supposed to be in the clearing, but I don't actually know anything about what it does. There are no stories about how it curses you, so I guess no one has ever been stupid enough to try and sit in it. Or, John said after swallowing his bite, it's so bad that it stops anyone from talking about it. We talked about it a little more as the night went on, but once the food was packed away and the fire was put out, we all went to our sleeping bags for some much-needed sleep. I think all of us thought about the seat a little as we drifted off, but it was hard to focus on much after such a long hike. The next day, we spent time swimming in the river, fishing, and planning what we would do that night. John explained how we would enter the clearing at dusk, with the setting sun making a great background for the film. Sean would sit in the chair, pretending to get possessed or something, while the rest of us ran into the woods. There would be lots of heavy breathing and shaky camera, and then we would start recording again once we had set up a campsite. We'll explain how Sean went missing, and then we'll stage some weird noises or something as we record inside the tent. What happens if we find the chair before dusk? Fred asked. Then we stop or make circles until the time is right. What happens if we don't find this place at all? Fred asked. John shrugged. We shoot a piece saying that our search was fruitless and that the legend remains just that. And so, as the sun began to go down behind the trees, we headed towards it. Today's hike felt different from the start. Yesterday, we chatted and laughed a lot, but today the woods seemed upset with the noise we were making. I didn't know at first if the others noticed, but I started thinking they felt it too. Sean tried to make jokes more than once, but he looked around nervously when the laughter got too loud. Fred was the same, telling us to be quiet more than once before glancing around as if wondering why he did that. John didn't seem to notice, just filming everything with his camera as we walked. If anything, he probably thought we were adding tension to his film, and he seemed happy about it. I found myself watching the sun as it went lower in the sky, not sure if I was scared of being in these suddenly quiet woods or excited to finally see the thing I always wanted to see. The closer we got, the more I felt like we would find it, and that scared me. I could believe the devil had come to this place, walked this very path, and I kept looking down as if I would see hoof prints. There were no bird songs here, no usual sounds from insects as they got ready for night, and the quiet was weird. The woods were thick and green, but the whole place felt off. I didn't have a word for it then, but I do now. The word I was looking for was blighted. "When do we get to this thing?" Sean asked as he wiped his forehead. He looked at me, but I just shrugged. It said to walk towards the sunset, and then we'll find it. "Well, it better hurry up," Sean said. "We're losing the light, and we'll be setting up camp in the dark in another hour." The sun was going down behind the trees, and I realized Sean was right. The story never said how far we had to walk, just to follow the setting sun. Who knew how much we had to walk or how long before we reached the seat? We walked for about 20 more minutes before we saw something up ahead. Something that made the trees fewer as we walked. The shadows gathered as we got closer to the clearing, and it seemed like they gathered around the big and scary chair. "Holy cow," John said softly, "it's real." And it sure was. The chair was about 5 feet tall and as wide as a lazy boy recliner. It seemed to be made of concrete, with carvings of gems painted on with skill. On the back of the chair, where a person's back and head would sit, there were 3 gray faces with red eyes and open mouths. They all looked the same at first, but the more I looked, the more I saw how different they were. One seemed to be crying, another laughing, and the one in the middle just looked angry. The whole thing looked like it belonged in a mini golf course, a strange maze attraction, or even a temple found randomly in the middle of the woods. It looked as out of place in the clearing as a dining room set, and even though I had wanted to see it, I couldn't make myself get too close. It was wrong, something about it felt bad, and I couldn't understand why I ever wanted to find it in the first place. As John recorded the thing, he stopped for a moment to wave his hands, trying to get Sean's attention. He wanted Sean to sit in the chair, just like they planned. But John got frustrated because Sean stood there, not moving. Sean seemed willing, but he couldn't. He was frozen, staring at the seat like he had never seen a chair before. John pointed at Sean and then back at me, trying to get him to go. Sean shivered as I shook him, looking at me almost like he was dreaming. "Go sit in the chair," I whispered, and Sean nodded slowly as he approached it. He got stopped when Fred pushed him aside and tried to sit in the chair himself. "What is he doing?" John mouthed. I didn't know how to answer him. The two struggled, and it would have looked like a play if I didn't know they weren't acting. Both of them had this blank look, like when you're on the phone but not really paying attention. Fred won, pushing Sean hard enough to make him fall, and claimed the seat. He sat there with a satisfied look that slowly turned into something more. Sean just sat there, looking at him without much interest, and as John stepped towards him, something happened. As Fred sat there, enjoying his new seat, his skin started to blister. At first, it was just getting red, almost like a sunburn that I almost missed in the fading light. I could have thought it was just a sunburn until blisters began to appear. Sores filled with pus grew and burst on his arms and face. Blood and pus ran down his arms and the chair, and as the sun set, his skin started to peel off his bones. He looked like those guys from Raiders of the Lost Ark, with his bones showing through his skin as he sat there, experiencing whatever glow he was feeling. As Fred melted in the woodland seat, I saw Sean stand up and push Fred's really drippy skeleton out of the chair to take his place. I tried to stop him, calling his name as I walked towards him, but he didn't hesitate after what happened to Fred. I looked back at John, expecting him to be really scared, but he had taken the camera away from his eye, and I could see him crying while he watched Sean start to turn red. But he wasn't crying because he was scared or sad. It looked more like he was really happy, like a priest who just saw something amazing. "John," I said, shaking him, "John, we have to go now." He didn't seem to hear me. He was only looking at Sean, who was quickly getting blisters. "John! John!" I yelled, shaking his arm, "We need to get away from here. We need to tell someone what happened. We need to get Sean out of that thing. We need to," but when I turned back, it was already too late. Sean's skin was melting off his bones, and you could see the white underneath. As his eyes turned into liquid in his skull, I tried to pull John away. "John, please," I begged, "please, we have to go." "Don't," but he was already walking towards the chair. As it finished with Sean, he pushed the skeleton out of the seat and sat down among the goo and the mess that was left there. That's when I saw something else, something I hadn't noticed until Sean's skeleton hit the ground. Fred's bones had turned into a powder that the forest breeze was already carrying away. I started running, but something caught my eye before I could leave the clearing. I saw the camera, the little one that John brought into the woods, and I picked it up before quickly leaving. I ran away like a scared person, leaving my best friends behind, and I prayed I would never see that cursed chair again. I stumbled through the woods for 3 days, eating whatever I could find and drinking from the stream when I finally got back to it. I wished many times that I had grabbed one of the bags on my way out of the clearing, like a tent or some food at least, but all I had was the camera and the clothes on my back. I thought about the tent many times as I lay shivering on the damp forest floor, watching the trees for anything. The shadow of the chair. The walking corpses of my friends. I wasn't sure which I was more scared of seeing, but I just knew that both would be after me before I could get away. When the search party found me on Tuesday, I was scared my fears had come true. They took me to the hospital, but when the police tried to ask me questions, I just gave them the camera and trembled in the face of their questions. That happened a long time ago, almost 10 years, but it's something I'll never forget. I haven't watched the video I gave the police, and I don't want to. The officer who saw it said it was the most disturbing thing he had ever seen, but it proved I didn't do anything wrong. I think they were planning to keep looking for my friends' bodies, but after seeing the tape, they stopped. There was no point in searching for kids who were no longer there, and it was too risky for the officers who might decide to sit in the chair. I lost my best friends that night, and sometimes it feels like the chair cursed me after all. People in town thought I had something to do with my friends disappearing, even though they never said it to my face. I ended up leaving town for college, and I've never seen a reason to go back. However, kids still go missing in those woods, and I can't help but wonder how many of them are lost to the woodland seat. So, if you find a strange chair in the forest, stay away. It's made for only one person, although it will gladly accept you for as long as you can handle it.